Hi, I'm Bill Patton with 720 Degree Coaching, and it's my distinct pleasure to have my very good friend and fellow goof-off, Styrling Strother, on the show. And we're going to talk about the Art of Winning project, or as Styrling likes to say, global project, solar system project, interplanetary tennis project. So, all right. So the art of winning is a lot about a game-based approach, right? So you got games that help players become mentally tough. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I first have to say that this whole project was based off the famous quote by someone that you and I hold dear in our hearts, Ricky Bobby, when he said, "If you're not first, you're last." So the idea is that it's about learning how to win at tennis, right? So there's been a lot of participation in tennis and a lot of hitting the ball over the net and rallying and let's just be consistent. And so what this is all about is not discarding any of that, but putting it in the proper perspective. So what I've attempted to do is use the data of 0 to 4, 5 to 8, and +9 shot rally link data and create games that basically improve mental toughness of a player just through the roof, okay? And so there's two things you need for mental toughness. You need awareness of what you need to be more mentally tough at, and you need the action of applying that or putting yourself in a scenario situation where that mental toughness is tested, right?
Okay. Yep.
So that's really kind of the core of where I am right now in the project. And we call it a project because it's something that's going on every day, every week, and we are linking things together and creating new things out of that. And what's really interesting.
Yeah, I want to cut you off. So now it's time to do first things second. So, tell us a little bit about who you are and what's your background and why should somebody who doesn't know you listen to you?
Okay, so Styrling Strother, professional tennis coach for 25 years. The first 15 or so, I did things like every other coach typically does. I learned from mentors, did what they did, copied, experimented. And then about in 2012, I have an epiphany about rally length. I was coaching two of my players. I realized right in front of my eyes that the majority of points that are played are in 0 to 8 shots. That's 4 shots for each player. And then even more of those in 0 to 4. So that's 2 shots. So I started just coaching by the numbers that way, bringing awareness to my players about the shortness of rally length, why we remember long rallies because they're long, and we dismiss the short, return misses and the first shot after the serve misses as, okay, whatever. And then we just remember that long rally and we're like, oh, the whole match hinges on that rally, but that's not true. It's a myth. Everything hinges really on those 0 to 8 shots. So I started into a project called Transforming the Practice Court. That was my personal study. Ran into a guy named Craig O'Shaughnessy in 2014 into 15. We started talking. We realized the numbers were the same on junior level, adult level, than it is on the pro. And I just started this deep dive into why. Why are the numbers so short? Why they're never going to go up as far as rally length is never going to be high. And why is that? And then it got me diving into the direct relationship between being mentally tough and controlling our mind and emotions and actually winning and losing, right? How to deal with those, how to negotiate the pressure around winning and losing. And that's what I've been involved in. So I've written a lot of articles. I've been published at PTR. I've spoken around, the country. And
that's enough.
So that's it.
That's enough.
Yeah, whatever. You can tell I don't really go down that road very often.
Yeah, well, even if they listen, yeah. I think people understand. All
I
right.
got it. Whatever.
I also have been a bit of a stats guy, and a long time ago there was a thing called CompuTennis where you had a laptop and you went and you put in all these things, and it wasn't really predicated so much on rally length so much and what happens, but we got to split out a lot of the realities of, hey, here's your first serve percentage in the ad court, and here's your first serve percentage in the deuce court, and really dialing in all that stuff. So I'm very much a stats guy, and it's been really interesting. So the more you spend time digging into numbers, the more you will start to see this. So match charting is something that is a great thing to do to get a better understanding. All right, now, so one of the main takeaways I just got from you right there is that there's a difference between the perception and the reality, and that's because the points that make you go ooh and the excitement is from the long rallies, but the actual winning of the match comes from serves that don't get returned.
Right, and it's like Craig says, the numbers are only there to study in order for you to figure out the story of the match, what's actually going on. And so the story of 0 to 8 shots total has been absent. We have not asked enough question about why is the story that the most missed shot, 0 to 4 shots, is the return. And then it's sort of a tie between the S+1 and R+1. And then the serve is the least missed shot, 0 to 4, just on those 4, right? And then what do we do about that? How do we set up our practice court so we look at why it's happening with a certain player? Are there some tendencies between all players? There are, and what are the nuances that when you're working with a specific player? And really what you find out is we all deal with pretty much the same thing, the same struggle, 0 to 4, and then 5 to 8. So I've always said it's starting the point is the hardest part about winning, starting it well, starting it intentionally, being deliberate, understanding first strike is not an offensive term. It's a term that describes the first 4 shots. And so that phase of the point, do you play it defensively? Do you play it just actively? Do you play it proactively? And so it's the story behind the data. And so that's really what I'm trying to figure out and discuss.
All right. Okay. So let's start digging in. And do you have a full hour, or are we doing a half an hour? What are we doing?
I've got an hour. Got till 4.
So I have an oven that's on and it's waiting for the bacon to go in it, but we'll be all right. Hey, I was looking at your board behind you, and it looks like you have some little viruses, some little viri stuck there. Those are
little guys?
People? Oh, like viruses to me. Anyway, so that's what it's where everybody's mind's at.
I mean, I've had Corona like 3 times already. I'm immune to it, so I'm good.
Very good. All right. So momentum scoring system. Why don't you get into what that is all about?
Okay. So in order to understand how to become more mentally tough, you've got to look at momentum. And for the longest time, momentum has been this elusive concept. Like, I feel the momentum, right? So I've looked at quantifying momentum by counting the number of points that you win in a row. Okay, so if you win 2 points in a row, it's called a momentum point. If you win 3 points in a row, it's called a conversion point. Okay, so I've clustered 2 in a row, 3 in a row into momentum and conversion points. If a player focuses on winning 2 points in a row, they're going to have an opportunity to convert, right, and win 3 points in a row. And we know that if you win 2 points in a row, you've created enough separation in the game score to just trade points and win the game, okay? If you win 3 points in a row in a game score, you're either up 40 love or you've won the game, okay? So winning 3 points in a row is crucial. Now, there's some stats to this. The player that wins 3 points in a row more times than their opponent or whichever player, they will win the match about 90-95% of the time. Okay, so that is an important stat to know if you're a player. If you are the player, if you win more 2 in a row scenarios than your opponent, then you have more opportunity. You have a statistical probability of winning more conversions. It's like baseball. The more times you get on base, the more opportunity you have to score runs, right? So the idea behind the momentum scoring system is to quantify momentum by counting number of points in a row. If you lose a point, then you basically reset your momentum score back to 0, and now the other player has 1-0 or 2-0, right? So it's this in the momentum scoring system, the score is never tied. Not only that, the momentum score is the real score. The game score is the perceived score. And you say, what do you mean by that, Styrling? Well, the game score can be deceiving, because if you're up 30 love, you're not up 30 points to 0. But your brain is telling you're up a lot, because 30 is a big number and 0 is a small number. But if you say I'm up 2-0, that's a different perception there than 30 love, right? Not only that, 30 all, you could arrive at 30 all 4 different ways. You could have won the last point and been up 1-0 because you had lost the point before that, right? You could have you could have lost the last point. So you were up a point, right? And you lost a point. So it's 0-1 30 all, or 2-0 30 all, or 0-2 30 all. So the way you play 30 all can be interpreted psychologically 4 different ways. And there are percentages, and I say psychological percentages, not just math, that there's a chance if you won the first 2 points of the game and you're up 30 love, the chances of you winning 3 in a row is less than the other opponent winning just 1 point in a row. Psychologically, and the reason why is because when you've won 2 points in a row, now you have more options. Okay, and so your concentration disperses because you're up in the score big. You're saying I'm up 30 love, and if you're saying I'm up 2-0, you're more in control of your thoughts. Okay, and you understand. Okay, that. So that's what I mean about momentum scoring system and how it transforms your mental toughness.
Yeah. It's funny. As a player, I've had experiences where I'm trying really hard to have my very best effort on every point, and I meet people who maybe I get up 30 love on them, and then they get all fired up, because they're down. So they double their intensity and their drive, if you will, to win points, and then they get back to 30 love, and then they have a little sigh of relief. Equaled the score. Right? And then they have a little dip in intensity, and then I make it 40-30, and then, now I've got the edge. But, right. I'm reflecting on one particular match that way, and you see some people are better at playing from behind because then the pressure's off.
Yes.
Some people don't play well with the lead because now they're expected to win, and some people get behind and they just go down the toilet, because they had unrealistic expectations of how it was all going to turn out. So, right. How do you deal with those kinds of things?
So, the momentum score keeps you in understanding of what's really going on. Momentum can shift pretty quickly in a tennis match. And what we're finding through the data, because we're tracking these rally links, which also give us the momentum score and the momentum and conversion points won by each player. So what we're seeing is if someone wins 3 points in a row, the best chance for the other player to win 3 points in a row is right after that. And the reason why is we're finding that when you're up in the score, your confidence is high, but your concentration is low. because your concentration is dispersed because you think you have all these options and you go for the big serve, or you can go for that backhand slice you always wanted to do because you have a cushion. The problem is that your concentration is low when you're up in the score because your confidence is high. So the confidence almost blinds your concentration or disrupts it. On the other side, when you're down in the score, your concentration tends to go more singularly focused, right? Unless you just check out, which is what you just said. People that can't deal with being behind, that's a checking out, giving up, okay? They don't have enough resilience, okay? And mainly because they're deceived by the game score or the set score. They haven't understand that momentum can shift quickly back to them if they just concentrate on 2 shots in a row is what I say, like the sequencing of shots, right? So there's the way you win points is you have to sequence shots. And if shots aren't related to each other and you're coming out of sequence, in other words, you're just trying to hit winners, which is unsustainable. Most of the time when people go into the zone, when they realize they're playing unconsciously, they're out of the zone. Okay. So that's how momentum shifts.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. That's how we deal with it is, look, momentum shifts quickly and your expectation of winning 6, 7, 8 points in a row is unrealistic. Okay. It's typically I win 1, I lose 2, I win 2, I lose 1.
Right.
So it's this, it's a wave like this. And most players interpret like this, they interpret, I'm going to win a lot, then I'm going to lose. And that happens, but that's not, if you want to stay steady, you have to understand what the momentum score is, who's won the last point and how many points in a row is that.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do is to play pressure sets. And so basically it's pretty simple. If you get game point and you fail to win the game, you lose all your points. So if it's 40-30 and you didn't win the point, now you go and you play love 30. So, and then the returner might get the next point and might be up 40 love. So if they don't win that point, now the whole game starts over again at love all. And with advanced players who really need to kind of go through that torture, I let them do that. But with lower level players, I have this thing, it's kind of like NFL overtime. Everybody gets a chance to score at the end. But if both players have failed to win a game point, then we just call it no game, and the other person serves. But a funny thing happens. I find that after they've played a couple of those, they really start to take care of those points when they're up 40 love or when they've got game point, and they're less susceptible to losing concentration and losing intensity. So you want to talk more about that, or should we go on to the GPS scoring system?
Yeah, I'll make one comment on that, then I'll go on. So games like that you just said, they are resiliency games, right? You're trying to create a player to have resiliency and to be able to tough it out when it's on the line and then they lose and then they're backed up, right? They lose a lot of momentum. So you're trying to almost shock the system, shock their mental and emotional system, and help them understand how to deal with that shock. It's kind of like, there's a river in North Carolina and there's this rock. It's called Slippery Rock. And you slide down this 40-foot rock into this ice cold water. It's like 25 degrees, right? The first couple times you do it, your body just, you want to die, right? You just, you catch your breath, but you do it. My son did it like 35 times. And after about 10, 11 times, you become more used to the coldness. You expect that. And so you prepare yourself. That's what those types of games that kind of penalize in extreme ways do. They shock the system of the emotional system and mental system of the player. So I like those. And I've tried to take something like that and mix it and put it into sort of a game situation where we start really dealing with the score and how the score puts the pressure on us. So when I talk about the GPS navigation system to win, what I'm referring to is the game point shot navigation system, right? So navigating your way to winning. If the data says that 0 to 4 shots, that's 2 shots for me and 2 shots for you as my opponent, then the first thing that we got to focus on in our training is winning the shot momentum battle. So I play a serve, you play a return, I play an S1, you play an R1, right? So if I make my first 2 shots when I'm serving, SS1, it puts the onus on you to make R and R1. So I have a game called First Strike Point Game that emphasizes that. So if you make your first 2 shots, you get a first strike point, and then we continue to play the point, and you can get the winning point as also until we play to 7 or 10. And then that really helps a player understand how important it is to make those first 2 shots and win the shot momentum or attempt to win the shot momentum.
Yeah. Let me throw something in there too, because I think there's a variation that you can use, especially when you have a match between that's where there's a clear favorite. So, I might say, all right, if the underdog can extend the point beyond the 5th shot, or any kind of shot number, and really put the onus on the better player to be the front runner and close those points out quick, and not dilly-dally out there against a player who they really ought to be beating really well. So it helps teach that front runner aspect. So
right, you can use that on either way. It really helps with expectations for a player. So I'd Pierce, he was playing a visiting pro I had out here, and the pro was just going at him, and Pierce was just kind of falling apart a little bit. So we stop and we go, well, Pierce, what is your expectation? He goes, my expectation is to beat you. And we all started laughing. We're like, no, you understand. You're not going to beat him very often because he's 3 times your age. He's been on the court twice as long as you've been alive. What should your expectation be? And he stopped and he went, 2 shots in a row. We go, yes. Make your first 2 shots every single point. It took him about 8 more games to 7. And he finally won a game. But what we saw in Pierce's mental and emotional state as he started to ramp up and get closer is his expectation of making 2 shots in a row, the first 2 shots in a row, he began to be successful. So he began to close the score between him and the coach. And that was a great lesson to us. And actually the coach was visiting me to learn about this system. He was like, this is really good because you didn't actually talk to him about what he was thinking, all that. We just put him in the game and let him understand how to level out his expectation to be something that was achievable for him against that better opponent.
All right, let's go on to Siri.
All right, so Siri I love. So Siri is S1, R1. And the way you play it is, if you make your S1, you get a Siri point. If you make your R1, if you're returning, you get a Siri point, and then you play out the point to see who wins it, right? So if you play to 7 or 10, if I'm serving, you hit your return, I hit a forehand as my S1, bam, the lights go off, I get a point. If you and if I put it in a place where you hit a backhand, you don't get your Siri because you got to hit a Siri R1. And so tactically, it really you begin to figure out, where do I need to put this serve so I can get a forehand? And as a return player, where do I need to put this return to get an R1 forehand so I can score a Siri point? So that's Siri.
I don't think I'm really too clear on that. But,
check it out.
He's interested in that. But I don't want to go on too long, but you'll be able, if somebody wants all this stuff, you'll email them.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, and they can find these on the Art of Winning site.
All right. Because I'm guessing it's a little more detailed than we have time to explain at the current time. All right. So now let's get into the conversions.
Conversion is just when you have to win 3 points in a row and you win the game. Okay. Each player, when the player is serving, they get to serve a maximum of 6 points. And if someone wins 3 points in a row before those 6 points are up, the serve switches. But if I'm serving and I get to the 6th point and I can't win 3 points in a row, or you can't win 3 points in a row, and whatever we end at, so let's say it was 0-1, and then I win the next point, and now it's 1-0, but I'm out of serves. We start the next game, you're serving, and you're down 0-1. I get to keep my point. It carries over to the next game.
Okay.
So that's a really cool game because it helps a player understand how to win 3 points in a row within a limited time. Because obviously I don't want a player serving all day long, so I limit it to 6. So that's conversions.
All right. And tsunami.
Okay. All right. So tsunami is really interesting. So tsunami, if you know anything about tsunamis, they can come upon you suddenly, right, without warning. And that's really the reason why the game is named this, because that's what can happen in this game. You can get up really big, and then the other player can come right back on you, because here's how you score it. If you win 2 points in a row, you get a game. Then you play the 3rd point, which is the conversion point. If the player that won the 2 points in a row and has the game, if they win the conversion game, they get a bonus game. So now the set score is 2-0 and the serve switches, right? If you win 2 points in a row, but you lose the conversion point, the serve switches, but the other player starts the next game serving up 1-0. So they only have to win one more point, and now it's a momentum point, a game. Now it's 1-1. If they win the conversion point, now it's 2-1. So they flipped it on you real quick. So these games put emphasis on every point and help you distinguish the meaning of each point, right? Because if I've won a point, if I win the next one, I get a game. If I win a next one, I get a bonus game. And so if I stop that momentum game, I can be in a position to win the game, right? So let's say you win the first point. If you win the next one, you get a game. But if I stop you, now I'm up 1-0. If I win the next one, now I'm up a game. And so you can go up 4 games really quick, 4-0. And then what happens? You relax, you lose concentration, and the other player comes back, and now it's 4-4. You're like, what happened? And that's what happens in tennis. In regular, when you're playing game scoring, is you can be up 4-1, and all of a sudden you're tied. You're like, what happened? Well, the momentum score is what happened.
Yeah. I mean, so one thing I like is to put my players in different situations for the same sort of effect. They say that whoever wins the first point, 60% of games are won by the person who wins the first point. 80% of games are won by the player that gets to 30 first. So I like to play a lot of games. I might have people play a set where each game is best 2 out of 3. So the idea is be the first one to get to 30, right? Or we might play a set where the server always has to start with 30-40.
Yes.
Okay, and fight their way out, because they've got to be able to win basically at some point 3 points in a row in order to be able to dig their way out of that. Right.
Correct.
Then the other one is we might start at 40-30, or I might have a handicap game where the better player has to start at 30-40 and the lesser player gets to start at 40-30. And
yes.
then it's, there's a lot of different ways to create these challenges. And the thing that, it kind of reminds me of the mentality of a Jimmy Connors or a Rafa Nadal who, go out there and play every point like it's match point.
Yeah. It's interesting, it's true that points are weighted a little differently than other points. And so what we're trying to do at the Art of Winning is first of all, when we play these games, we log all the data, right? So if someone went up 2-0 or 30 love, as you would suggest, what is the percentage that they win that next point, right? And they lose that next point. So and then do they win the game? Like you said, if you win the first 2 points, you have an 80% chance of winning the game. Well, is that statistic true for your player, right? Or is there some universal truths, right? So we're trying to distinguish what is universal and what is particular to the player, right? And so what we found is what is particular to a player is how that player's personality plays out, right? And we know we have different personality types. Vic Braden talked a lot about this, my first mentor, where we have personality types and they interpret pressure and negotiate pressure in a certain way, right? So, you know, analytical minds typically interpret pressure a little bit differently than, say, spontaneous players and feelers, right? Intuitive thinkers versus spontaneous feelers. And then the idea of risk, right? Do players deal with risk a lot better than some players, right? And you use that what is it? Not blackjack, but the roulette. So I say, okay, if you had 10 $100 chips, okay, what's your first bet? So a lot of people will bet a color, red or black. More riskier players will bet a number. And then if they, based on whether they won that bet or not, do they bet black and red or do they go for a number again? You can kind of assess the risk of how a player interprets risk. Then you can start to understand when they play these games, why they're taking risk when they do, right? And it's based on what they're thinking. So it's really important when you play these games, whatever game, the game you create or I create, that we try to get players to understand why they're making the decisions you're making and how to help them to discover a better way to make a better decision.
Okay, I have a completely fresh thought that this is the first time this entered my mind, but I'm going to use the analogy of an investment portfolio, you know, because you want to invest in a lot of, you know, safe stuff that's has a proven record and you're going to earn money, but there's not a lot of risk. And then you want a certain percentage of your money to be in some slightly higher risk stuff, because then if it all works out, then you can make even more. And then a little sliver of your stuff could be on these startups, you know, where, you know, if you hit Amazon before anybody knows what it is, then now you're raking in the dough. So as we play, I think we also, we have a question in a second. I'll get to that question. Anyway, you know, you want to have some high risk plays that you use because the payoff is that you can keep people off balance with them. You can keep them guessing. I'm going to give one example. I had this girl. So imagine somebody standing in the deuce court, and up in the ad court is a girl about ready to hit a forehand volley, right? Big looping shot right at her forehand volley. But no, the girl in the deuce court runs 45 feet, or no, not that far. She runs 25 feet on a dead sprint to go take a backhand volley, poaching in front of the girl with the forehand volley. You can say, never do that. Conventional wisdom says, no. What did Stephanie do? She did that. And when she did that, it shocked the other team so significantly that a match that was 3-all in the third was 6-3.
Yeah.
A win, right? So anyway, you want to go a little bit more on that before we get into Segundo? Oh, wait, and here's the question. Is Styrling wearing a Dale Earnhardt hat?
Hey, you know what? It's a Ricky Bobby hat. No, it's actually NC State. It's my alma mater.
State. So it looks like an 8, but it's really a big S.
It's really a big S for.
Yes. So, well, but hey, we touched Richard Petty's car in Daytona.
Yes, we did.
The
One
king.
of them. One of them.
One of them. All right.
All right.
So let's go on to Segundo.
Secondo, it's Italian for second.
Okay.
Right? And so one of the things with our games, we like to talk about primary and secondary shots. So a primary shot will be a shot that is hit to the biggest part of the court, width-wise and depth-wise, right? And then a secondary shot is hit to the smaller part of the court, width-wise or depth-wise, based on your location. For example, if you're receiving a forehand from the ad court, so it would be an inside-out forehand, would be primary, because you're hitting from ad to ad and sort of in that bigger space. If you hit inside in, ad to deuce, inside in forehand, like down the line, what Fed loves to do, that's more of a secondary shot because you're hitting to the smaller part of the court. And it almost kind of goes along the line with the Wardlaw directionals, if you know Paul Wardlaw and are familiar with that. The idea of secondo is this. We play it in a first strike game, point game mindset. You hit your serve. If you play your next shot, your S+1, your S1, if you play it secondary, secondo, you get a secondo point, right? So if I go serve to the deuce and you give me a forehand, my secondary shot is down the line forehand. That's a secondo point. If the return player hits their R1, the shot after the return, secondary, they get a secondo point. So you can imagine what it does to a player mentally. They have to make a choice. Do they send their first shot after their serve or return primary or secondary? And there's risk rewards regarding those decisions, right? They can play it primary. They're just not going to get the secondo point. They can just try to earn the winning point, right? So it's another opportunity to give a player that takes these risks, like you were saying before, you know, is it a big risk or is it a low risk based on your court position? And can you get that extra point on top of the winning point, right? So I can get my secondo point, deny you yours, or you just decide not to do it, and then you win the point, it's 1-1. So that's the idea behind the games, is to help create scenarios where you as a player have to make a decision and you have to decide, is this risky? Am I good with this risk or am I not so good with this risk? And I'm going to try to play it primary and then just play to win, right? And so that's secondo, Italian for two.
You're so fancy.
Hey,
Right.
trying to create.
Yeah. No, it's a Gary V accusation. So, all right, aftershock.
Okay, aftershock. So we know that if we hit a really good serve, placement-wise, and if we add power, obviously that's good. But placement is really important on the serve. It's like the serve, and I stole this from Gary V. I mean, not Gary V. I stole this from Craig. Craig, he goes, the serve is like the earthquake, and then the next shot is like an aftershock. So that's why I call this aftershock. So if you place your serve in the box that we designate, so let's say we go inside run or T serves, and we have a space, right? So divide it up. So if the server hits the serve there, they get the aftershock point. If the R1, the shot after the return, okay, is made into the court anywhere, then they get an aftershock point, right? So there's this trade, right? If I hit my target on the serve, I get a point. If the R1 just comes back in the court, the return player gets a point, and now we play it out for the winning point. It sounds kind of funky when I explain it, but when you play it, you really get to understand that if I place my serve, the return comes back, I can really put a lot of pressure on the return player for making their R1.
Yeah, and I think it's a generally great principle that when you give some sort of bonus point for the thing, for the objective you're trying to create, that goes a long way. So, you know, like for instance, what I'll do is, you know, we'll do the same thing. If you hit the target area, you get a bonus point, right? But then if you are able to take your S1, so like one play I really like is the kick serve out wide in the ad court, followed by a ground stroke drive deep cross court to the other side. I mean, it's a bread and butter play because you're going to create a lot of movement. There's a lot of diagonal backwards movement created from that. So you could actually make the target shot, get one, make the second target shot, get another point, lose the point, and still end up 2-1 just because we're training this shot combination thing.
Right. Yeah. And so the idea behind giving points for targets or for specific objectives is to build confidence in the player, to rehearse the pattern or the sequence. And so one of the things that I'm really discovering now about the flow state, and by the way, what's really interesting, Bill, is, for all those that are watching and that may not understand, Bill was absolutely instrumental in helping me write 7 On-Court Strategies, my #1 bestseller. He really pushed me to expand my thinking, right? Yeah, I'm giving you kudos, bro. Because
I'm going to give you half an hour to stop that.
No, seriously. So what I want to say is, though, that book, I keep going back to that book because that's foundational to everything I'm talking about. 1-2 reset, spot on the ball player. So what I want to say is that the book is so powerful in introducing the concepts of the mindset that I'm trying to talk about here, is that if you understand 2-shot sequencing, 1-2 reset, how that keeps you in the flow. Here's what I was going to say. If you look at practice courts generally, you have a lot of balls fed into the strike zone of a player, and for good reason, right? They're working on their stroke. What's interesting, though, is when you're doing that, it puts the player into a flow state because they're repeating the same thing over and over and over again, and they get into a rhythm and a flow, and they become almost unconsciously be able to do that. But when you go play a match, you don't get 100 forehands in a row.
Mm-hmm.
You get a forehand and then a backhand. So what I'm saying is, if we can arrange our practice courts, okay, yes, maybe we need to work on some forehand technique, backhand technique. I get that. But at the same time, if you want to train a player to win, you've got to train them with forehand, backhand sequencing, backhand, forehand sequencing. Mm-hmm. Balls that are high, low in those combinations, right? So there's a way to train technique and sequence it and try to get a player to understand how to break into the flow as they are going to have to break into the flow when they get in a match, right?
Yeah.
So trying to emulate how do you break into the flow in a match by practicing it. If I am on Broadway and I'm rehearsing my lines, right, I've got to rehearse the same lines in the same way and dress the same way and come in at the same time as I'm going to do it in the production. Because if I just practice whatever in practice and then just go try to do the production, and nothing I practiced was the sequencing as I was going to have to deal with it in a production. Yeah. That's the same idea.
So if you're really good at hitting 1,000 forehands in a row, that's awesome. But if you're singing a song and you're only singing the same note over and over again 1,000 times, the ticket sales are not going to be what you thought they were going to be.
Well, that's the thing. Like, your opponent is not giving you that same forehand over and over and over again in a match. Okay, so we got to put it in context, Bill. And so that's what if there's one message I want to get out, is that train a player more in the context of what they're going to deal with. Have the content. Train them how to hit a ball, what to hit. Forehand, backhand, forehand, volley, smash, how to hit it. But it's got to be when, where, and why. Because if we're not in context, it's, it's like, what it's like? It's like interpreting someone's 4-line Facebook posts, and everything about them and what they believe and their intentions and all that, right? It's
right.
So many comments are taken out of context because we don't understand the individual behind the comment, right?
And they even read the original post to begin with.
Well, or watch the video.
Let's do Ocean's 11 and then wrap it up because I'm hungry.
Ocean's 11 is a depth challenge game. On the return, if it's deep, and what I mean by deep, if it lands between the 60-foot line and the baseline 78, right? The orange line and the 78. If the return goes deep, you get an Ocean's 11 point. You get 1 point. If the S1 is deep, the server gets the Ocean's point. So that's really challenging, especially for a high-level performance player. Look, if you're a coach and you're trying to get your player to play the ball deep on the return and the S1, Ocean's 11 just reveals so much about that. Because the ability for the server to pop off the serve and get in position to play a deep ball on their S1 is very tough when the return player is hitting it deep. Right? So this is actually a game that gives the return player a little bit of an advantage. First strike point games gives the server the advantage. So some of these games give the server the advantage. Some give the returner the advantage. And Ocean's 11 is definitely one that gives a return player the advantage right off the bat.
All right, let's bring this thing home. What are the big takeaways today?
What are they? Yes, the big takeaway is data is there to help you tell a better story of what happened in the match. It's not enough to know your player missed 30 forehands or 25 backhands. It's where in the point, in the rally length, did they miss that forehand or backhand, right? I have so many players that come back and they go, what was wrong? They said, I missed a ton of forehands. I go and look at the data. They missed forehand returns. So a forehand return is not a forehand ground stroke. It's a different stroke. Or backhands, or, they double. They said I couldn't serve, but they only had 2 double faults the whole match. Okay, it wasn't maybe it was the placement of their serve, not that they just couldn't serve. Right. So the data is supposed to help a coach ask better questions, ask more specific questions, and to be able to rearrange the practice court to meet those things that are really going on in a match, and rather than what we perceive is going on. And most players are like, I need to be more consistent. Well, but where in the point do you need to be consistent, right? In the point do you need to make more shots? And right. I can tell you right now, without a shadow of a doubt, Bill Patton, that players need to learn to be consistent and make shots on their first 2 first. So that's why I say, if you're not first, you're last. Because if you can't make your first 2 shots every single point, you're going to be in trouble of being last. You're going to be in trouble of losing the match.
All right. Okay. So how can people find out more about the art of winning and get involved in the membership so that they can get a hold of some really good content? Okay.
So I'm going to send you the link so you can post it below this post.
On YouTube. So that'll be on YouTube.
On YouTube. And then also on the Facebook Live, we can go back and you can plug it in.
I'm not going to do that. In order to get the link, you're going to have to go to my YouTube to get the link. Right. So, let me throw my thing in there.
Okay,
once I get 200 subscribers, I'm having a giveaway. So I'm going to give away some foam balls and some autograph books and some other stuff like that. So I really want people to go to my YouTube, and after a little while, I'm going to stop doing all these Facebook Lives, and pretty much everything's going to be there. Yeah. So anyway, All
They
right.
can also contact me, Bill, and they can go contact me through Facebook or go to transformpracticecourt.com and get me there, and I'll send it. Because here's the thing about the membership:
That's,
it's really cheap. I can tell you
that's
that.
don't feel like helping Bill, you watchers. That's if you
Yeah, right, whatever.
all
No,
right.
help Bill. No,
Great.
what I'm saying is it's extremely reasonable for the amount of information you are going to have access to.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's basically my life's work the past 8 years in a membership form. It's got 7 different portals, and you get access to all of them, and it's all the different things and variety of things you can deal with, how to improve your mental toughness, how to have better patterns, what patterns do you have, what patterns you need to stay away from, and all sorts of stuff like
All
that.
right. Hey, thank you so much for your time, man. Always a pleasure to see you. If too bad a lot of you missed the hilarity of the pre-show.
Oh man.
All right. Hey, thanks again, and hope everybody enjoyed watching this. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Bill.